all parents, when our son was born, my husband and I wanted the very best for him and for his future. We looked forward to seeing him reach his potential that we thought would unfold as he grew and matured. And given the loving background, the loving family that he had, and we were able to provide him with many opportunities, we thought that would just happen as part of a natural process. What we wanted our son to have is what all parents want for their children. We wanted our son to feel loved and respected. We wanted him to experience a sense of inner peace and contentment. We wanted him to maintain a level of good health. We wanted him to feel that he could contribute to society and feel valued, no matter what that looked like, whether it was volunteering, whether it was in a wonderful level of employment, it didn't matter. We wanted him to make meaningful connections to others and have a caring and supportive network of friends and family. And we wanted him to know the joy of attaining some dreams. We know that not all of these things happen at once in life. It's a bumpy road for most of us. But we also recognise that these are the foundations that enrich our lives and make our lives worthwhile. Sorry, I promised I wouldn't get emotional. And for most of us, many of these hopes are realised when we look back on our lives. Some may not be realised, but many of them are. But this has not been the reality for our little boy. Our son was identified as a vulnerable child at the age of 4. His first psychological referral was at the age of 4. I was a teacher, a very passionate teacher, and I doubted my parenting ability. I had 2 beautiful daughters, one of whom is here now. It's impossible to convey to you the extent of turmoil that our family experienced throughout the following years until he was formally diagnosed with schizophrenia at the age of 16. Or the reality of the day-to-day experiences that he had to experience in that time frame between 4 and 16 when he had that formal diagnosis. Or to explain the turmoil that our family experienced during that time and still continues for us today. My husband has passed away suddenly, and to this day I accredit a lot of that to the fact that he also had an anxiety disorder and couldn't deal with the stress and anxiety of the situation that we were living in. The critically important years when he would have emerged as an adult, I use this term quite a lot, were actually stolen from him. We grieve for his loss of the life experiences that should have made his life feel meaningful and worth living. Despite all the protective factors in his life of a loving family, opportunity, educated parents, we were an average family, but we could offer him lots of things. He was still stricken with this debilitating illness. As a result, he now lives with unrelenting torment, feelings of unworthiness, pain, grief, absolute loneliness and paranoia every day of his life. He's been removed from our home on numerous occasions in the middle of the night by police and taken to psychiatric wards where he's been hospitalised for lengthy periods of time. He's attempted suicide on several occasions. He's even asked me, his mother, to help him to euthanize himself. As a parent, I struggle watching my son attempt to cope with daily living. Can you imagine if your loved one never experienced a moment of joy, cannot foresee a future where he will feel loved by anyone? Sorry, I'll just move these. These aren't my papers, so I'll pop them on the floor. They're doing a sliding dance. So again, can you imagine if your loved one is so socially isolated, no one rings, no one, apart from his mum and his sisters, is unable to work, hears voices that are giving him denigrating comments about himself, telling him he should be dead, he's worthless, has no self-worth, has no friends, is unable to engage in public life, in a cafe having a coffee for more than an hour at a time, has no meaningful purpose in life, and experiences mental anguish beyond measure. Not all mental illness is the same. I could continue, however, I hope this conveys to you some sense of the utter human devastation that my son experiences every waking minute of his life. And yet, look at that little face. Even on the best of days, when he does leave his house for a short period of time, he experiences levels of paranoia that you and I can only imagine. In fact, I don't think we can imagine it. His home, he's now living, since my husband died, I realised that something could happen to me quickly, just like it did with my husband. I found him deceased outside. And I actually asked my son to go and find his father while I rang the ambulance, and I'll never forgive myself for that. It was dark and I sent my son with a mental illness to have to go and find his father. These are some of the fears and the worries and anxieties that we live with as carers. And I've managed to, and I'm fortunate, far more fortunate than many people, because I could afford to take out a mortgage and buy a unit for him in case I pass away suddenly, because I don't want my daughters to have to deal with the homeless issues that might arise if I were to die suddenly, as his dad did. But when he does leave his home, he currently has 3 levels of security. 1 level's not enough, 2's not enough, 3's not enough, and he's now trying to get a 4th level of security, because he believes every time someone leaves his home, someone gets in and fiddles around with his music, his writings and his belongings. Can you imagine his sense of fear? My job as his parent has been to attempt to prepare him to live as independently as possible, but I can't achieve that on my own. He's very fortunate in that he's one of the few people with a mental illness that has NDIS support. But because of his levels of paranoia and fear, he doesn't allow unknown people into his home, and he may work with them for a little while and then he ends the relationship. As I age, I live with the constant fear and ask myself, what will happen to my son once I'm no longer here? I'm an intelligent and educated person. I was a teacher and a deputy principal, and I specialised in working with children with severe behavioural issues, because we now know that children can be identified as early as 3 and 4 with severe behavioural and mental health issues. I'm in a position to provide a level of support to my son that many other carers and parents are not in a position to do, due to finances, time commitments having to care for their loved ones, their own personal health, distance from service providers and so on. So on one level, my son is more fortunate than many others. I recall my deceased husband, his name was Robbie, always used to say to me, and I can hear him saying it, "Darling, if not for you, our son would be dead." But I ask myself on a daily basis, is this living for my son? Daily he tells me he just wants to go to sleep and never wake up. And as a mother, that breaks my heart. I'm constantly amazed by the fact that he has the courage to get out of bed each day, to face another day of indescribable loneliness, rejection, and utter despair. My career has taken a pathway based on him. I started as a normal mainstream teacher and I specialised in behaviour management, mental health and social wellbeing in children. But the system doesn't cater for these children as adequately as it could. Teachers try very hard, but they're not trained. They have large numbers of children. The funding isn't available to provide extra educational assistance, and more of it's being withdrawn. There are many in our community with their own stories, many of you will have stories, who are struggling without the support that you need. It has been difficult to navigate and seek out appropriate sources of help for my son, but I'm tenacious. I also volunteered and worked in mental health, and I've trained in many different programs in mental health and brought them to WA. There are many well-intentioned carers, parents, loved ones and workers who really have the best of intentions, but who often don't have the ability for a number of reasons to provide the necessary supports. Family members and well-equipped carers are critically important to the process of healing. But again, funding has been withdrawn. What is needed is investment in people, people who are informed, compassionate, caring, non-judgmental, and who are themselves supported. They need support in the roles they perform. There's a huge necessity to have a person-centred approach. And we also need what I call, and others call, champions in this area, who are skilled through their own lived experience and education to stand beside teachers in early childhood, in schools through adolescent development and into adulthood and across the lifespan to provide encouragement and mentoring to those people who are courageous enough to work with people such as my son. Please think about what it is you want and hope for your loved one. And then imagine if this was how life was for the person you love. My son's human rights are equal to those you love. His life is just as precious, but I cannot do this on my own. The challenges facing my son often seem insurmountable, but he deserves some semblance of happiness, as we all do. So I ask the state government to commit to improving the lives of people such as my son through the allocation of funding aimed at prevention measures, especially in our young people beginning in the very early primary school years. Imagine if this was your child. Thank you.